Good afternoon. My name is Aisha Chugtai, and I'm the chair of the Budget Committee. I'm going to call to order our regular meeting for Monday, June 24th, 2024. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify the presence of a quorum.
Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Wansley.
Present.
Rainville.
Present.
Vita.
Present.
Ellison.
Here.
Osman.
Present.
Cashman is absent. Jenkins is absent. Chavez.
Present.
Chowdhury.
Present.
Palmisano.
Present.
Vice Chair Koski.
Present.
Chair Chugtai.
Present.
Councilmember Cashman.
Present.
There are 12 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. We will begin with item number 1, which is our only item on the consent agenda. This item is technical amendments to the 2024 budget based on the council's recent actions related to the 2024 consolidated plan and action plan. I'll move approval of this item. Do I have a second?
Second.
The item has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? That motion carries. Next, item number 2 is related to an appointed position of Deputy Commissioner Public Health and Initiatives and Public Health Initiatives and Operations. I understand from Human Resources that they are requesting this item be returned to staff for more work to be brought back in a revised form to a future meeting. I will make that motion to refer to staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
The item has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of returning it back, referring the item back to staff, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? That motion carries. Next, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the City Council's fiscal year 2025 budget priorities for inclusion in the Mayor's 2025-2026 recommended budget. I presented on this item at our last meeting on June 10th. As I shared via email prior to our last meeting and during our committee meeting, all council members had the opportunity to offer any amendments to the packet, which were due last Monday. My office received amendments from several council members, which are reflected in updated documents that are publicly accessible in the LIMS file with the posted agenda for this meeting. I've also prepared an updated presentation that reflects the amendments we've received, which I will now present. But in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over slides that haven't changed and cover only those that reflect the submitted amendments. Kai, will you skip ahead to slide number 5? Perfect. As we noted last time, based on the priorities council members submitted, we saw 11 major themes, which are noted here. My office received amendments from Council President Payne, Vice Chair Koski, Councilmember Wansley, Councilmember Cashman, and Councilmember Chavez, which I will now cover based on the themes that are listed here. Next slide, please. There were no changes to the levy or arts and culture themes. Related to the climate theme, however, at the bottom of this slide, Councilmember Cashman's amendment ranked the priorities that she submitted, which updated her zero waste proposal as priority number 2. Next slide, please. All right. There were several changes related to the community safety theme that we received. First, Council President Payne's amendment updated the funding amount for the behavioral crisis response proposal to a to-be-determined one-time amount for a supervisor vehicle, along with $295,000 ongoing for staff capacity. Councilmember Wansley's amendment added a violence prevention funding proposal. Councilmember Cashman's amendment changed the name of her previous Uptown Safety proposal to Uptown Safety Ambassador Program and ranked it as priority number 1. Councilmember Chavez's amendment added first a Lake Street Cultural District Safety Ambassador's proposal, a Muslim Youth and Family Services Community Safety and Youth Programming proposal, and if you'll skip ahead to the next slide, a Next Step hospital-based support for victims of violent injuries proposal. Next slide, please. Related to the business development and support theme, Councilmember Cashman's amendment changed first the name of her Promise Act support proposal to technical assistance for uptown revitalization and significantly reduced the one-time allocation from $1 million to $100,000 and ranked it as priority number 3. Next slide, please. On homelessness, housing, and tenant protections, Vice Chair Koski's amendment added a proposal on affordable home ownership preservation for $590,000 ongoing. Next slide, please. On infrastructure and capital projects, Councilmember Cashman's amendment reflected the traffic calming proposal she co-authored as priority number 4. Next slide, please. There were no changes to the public health theme. On the city enterprise theme, Vice Chair Koski's amendment added a proposal for enterprise resource planning, internally known as the ERP, transformation project phase 2 for $14 million over 5 years, one time. Next slide, please. And then on community programs and organizations, Council President Payne's amendment modified the funding amount for his youth programming proposal, which was formerly to be determined to $800,000 one time. Next slide, please. And then finally, on the public services theme, Councilmember Cashman's amendment modified the name of her previous Skyway signage amendment to Downtown Wayfinding and Skyways and ranked it as priority number 5. Okay, will you skip ahead 2 slides? Wonderful. I will note that since most council members did not rank their priorities that they submitted, we found the previous priority number ranking to be misleading to the public and to other members. So we changed it to say priority name unless the member specifically requested for their, submitted an amendment requesting their priorities be ranked. So that completes the submitted amendments and presentations. I will move to approve the revised version of the City Council's 2025 priorities. Do I have a second on that motion? It has been moved and seconded. I will now open up for discussions. Do any council members have any further amendments they'd like to propose at this time? Would any authors wish to speak on their proposed changes or offer any comments? I will first recognize Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Vice President Chuck Tai. I just wanted to speak to my amendment around the violence prevention funding. I know also several of my colleagues have specified initiatives related to violence prevention or community safety here, and I do want to just speak to why I think I'm seeing so many desperate unarmed public safety initiatives being created at a ward-by-ward level. I know right now, as we're seeing even in PHS, it feels that we have a piecemeal approach when it comes to our community safety initiatives, and I know council members are doing their best to be responsive to the variety of concerns that they're hearing from their wards and communities, and are being responsive because we're having troubles having a coordinated response from the administrative side. So I'm very excited to see, we do have a shared agreement or share value of our community safety work. And a lot of these initiatives at the local level are being kept alive from council members. I know like with BCR, for instance, and another number of these safety ambassador programs. So I do want to highlight for my piece, though, we've had these ongoing conversations around, violence prevention funding not being consistent, and seeing that with Councilmember Chavez Next Step's proposal and hearing that from vendors ourselves of the constant fear of, are they going to have the resources needed to pay people or keep programs continuing that helps keep our community safe. We want to make sure that there is ongoing predictable funding, at least on the city side. And that's what my amendment is reflective of. And I know with a number of my other colleagues to make sure that vendors are not constantly put in these precarious positions. So really excited to work with my colleagues in advancing community safety overall at a ward-by-ward level as we're continuing this work with the administration to also enact that citywide approach that our communities have desperately been asking for and needing. So that's a little bit about mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, before we continue discussion, I'll recognize that Councilmember Jenkins has joined us in this meeting. Next, I'll recognize Vice Chair Koski.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai. I just wanted to speak to the two amendments first, and then I have a quick comment. The first one I had was for the Affordable Homeownership Preservation Grant Program. This is a current program, and this amendment seeks to maintain the city's relationship with Habitat for Humanity and expand funding for the city's Affordable Homeownership Preservation Grant Program, which provides grants and assistance with repairs to vulnerable homeowners who have been cited by housing inspectors through the Department of Regulatory Services. Very low income and other at-risk homeowners, such as seniors, people with disabilities, and veterans are often at risk of losing their homes due to expenses of resolving housing code issues and other deferred maintenance. And so this will support homeowners in that way. And this amendment is reflective of a Regulatory Service Department budget proposal submitted to the mayor as part of their 2025-26 biennial budget recommendation. The second amendment that I had was for the Enterprise Resource Planning Transformation Project, Phase 2. And this seeks to fund acquiring and contracting for a new enterprise resource planning or ERP system software, including software licensing, implementation costs, implementation staffing, and staffing backfills needed for implementation. As I think many of us know, the current system is outdated, expensive to maintain, doesn't talk to one another, and to other important systems. It is soon also to not be supported by the current vendor. The new system will consolidate many separate systems into one as a single source of truth, and eliminating many manual processes and streamline many key city business processes. This transition will create efficiencies enterprise-wide for human resources, performance management, hiring and onboarding, payroll, finance, procurement, banking, and asset management, and the budget and other related lines of business. And this amendment is reflective of an IT proposal submitted to the mayor as part of their 2025-26 biennial budget recommendation. And then lastly, I just had a comment. I just want to thank Councilmember Chugtai for creating this process for all of us. This is new for the council to put our what our priorities are as individuals, but then as a body together. And it was really interesting and really enlightening for me to hear from all of my colleagues, and I really loved learning about, early on in this process, what's been really important to you, whether it's a citywide initiative or it's something specific in your ward. It has really helped me learn early on about what I might see and kind of what's going on in your areas too. So I just want to say thank you to all of my colleagues too, because it was really helpful to learn about what's been important to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And next I'll recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, I didn't submit priorities or participate in this process. And I think it's fine to have a public conversation about priorities. It's important maybe to get a new council together in a conversation about priorities, but I don't see anything in particularly new here. And in light of our current financial situation, I don't think it's appropriate for any of us to be prioritizing and finding dollar amounts that sometimes we haven't worked with staff with to prioritize our own ward's pet projects. It feels like many of my colleagues have prioritized using government money to support a specific project or population in their own ward. And these major themes that I see are consistent with the broader goals of the city. Things like 38th Street Thrive have been going on for many, many years. The 4th Precinct renovation and community center, which was highlighted in an audit that took place last term and has come out in several ways, such as with MDHR. Zero waste initiatives without any amount of money attached feels like a theme we've had here since 2014. Traffic calming, lead remediation, opioid response, all of these are things that we've prioritized now for several years. I hear my colleagues talk about wanting this body to have the power of the purse, but you have to understand that it is not the power to spend taxpayer money as we please. Ultimately, this is simply what we've done to be in conversation with the mayor, but I'd really urge you all to have a real conversation with the mayor. And so to that statement, this statement that you're about to make, here's what I would like for it to say, and it doesn't. I'd like for it to say that we have a responsibility to look at the bigger picture and ensure the city has a balanced budget, especially now. That means we have to consider the needs of every resident in the city, and we need to consider the constraints of our depleting ARPA dollars, our federal money, and our rapidly increasing labor costs. We simply don't have the funds to pursue new programs, and I think it's incredibly irresponsible and tone deaf and creating false expectations for us to be having conversations and prioritizing some of these things. Thank you for letting me add in my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai, for sharing all these budget priorities and for reflecting the amendments that I submitted. For me, it's a process of getting my priorities in line. I have already had a meeting with the mayor. I'm sure most of us have and will continue to have meetings in the coming months. So this process is for us to do that deep work of reflecting what our communities are asking us to do with the city's budget. And I think it's important that we do that ahead of time before the end of the year. I just wanted to make a quick comment. My number one priority is funding Uptown Safety Ambassador Program that actually was funded in the 2024 budget at $300,000. And so ahead of the Office of Community Safety presentation that we have today, I just wanted to note that it's important for us to have budget clarity because my plans around the implementation of this program and getting that funding out into community, making this program successful for the Uptown area, depend on our departments being able to implement the budgets that we do put in place. So the 2024 budget that was passed last year being implemented this year so that we can plan as well for next year.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you so much, Chair Chugtai. I just wanted to echo some gratitude to you and Vice Chair Koski for setting up this process. I've seen many a budget cycle in the city of Minneapolis, both as a resident, as a policy aide. And one thing that has always been hard to follow along when it comes to the budget process is how complicated it is and understanding council members' priorities and the way to engage there. That part has always felt a little clandestine, a little unattainable. And then working with council members behind the scenes, you're so limited in having the conversations that you need to have with everyone at the table around what people's budget priorities are. What are they likely to support? What are they hoping for? This moral document that we get to voice the voices of our residents into one. And I thought this process was really helpful in creating that accessibility both for our community and then doing what we're supposed to do, is have a discussion about the budget in a public meeting all together so we have an understanding. I know that there's some council members that I talk to with some regularity, and there's some that I don't. And so for the council members that I don't oftentimes get to check in with, it was really clarifying to know what their priorities are and what we can expect come December, November, and we're really in the throes of the busyness of budget season. And I also kind of wanted to echo what Councilmember Cashman brought up in terms of her priorities. I didn't rank my priorities, but one of my number one priorities is transit safety. And that is a proposal that was, again, funded in the last budget cycle, but is potentially likely to get cut. And so it felt really important to uplift a project that's not shiny and new, something that has been asked for by residents in my community and other communities, and uplift that. I want to see some funding happen here. I want to start engaging in conversations with our department heads and our budget office and get that there. And then this has also been really helpful in preparation for my meeting with the mayor and just getting my priorities straight as a new council member. And lastly, in terms of us being fiscally responsible and being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, I really, really want to see our Office of Performance Management and Innovation give us the tools necessary to determine what's working well in the city, what's not as efficient, so we can make decisions on where to tighten our belt. Because it's true, we have a big deficit before us, and we have some expensive projects that we have to take a look at. And I believe that this body deserves to have all the tools necessary so we can make decisions together to address that and be good stewards of taxpayer dollars while making sure we're representing the values and the needs of our constituents.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Chuktai. I just want to begin by thanking you, Chair Chuktai and Vice Chair Koski, for helping us go through this process. I think it's an important process that sheds light to the public, the work that we all do for our residents. Last year, Vice Chair Koski went through a similar process, asked us about our priorities ahead of a meeting with the mayor. And just for the public to know, last year when I met with the mayor, he didn't include any of my priorities in the budget. And we didn't go through this process, so the public didn't know that the mayor of Minneapolis didn't include any Ward 9 priorities, which meant that none of the priorities that my residents asked for through the process that I went to were included in the budget. What this does now is it puts it in the public. It shows the residents I represent what priorities I want to see get funded in the budget. And if it's not included, best believe I'm going to make an amendment this coming November to make sure it's included, to make sure that my residents are represented in this budget. I do believe that budgets are moral documents, and I believe that moral documents should uplift and help our residents thrive. So I'm just very thankful for this process because I want to make sure that we are having collaboration in this city, that our residents are being represented well, and that our priorities, it isn't like our priorities, it is our residents' priorities through the multiple hundreds of conversations, constituent contacts that we make, phone calls, community meetings. That's how we develop these proposals. It's because what our residents want to see get funded, what they want to see get done. You'll probably see one of my proposals is the Lake Street Safety Ambassador Program that is being threatened to get cut as well. And when we fund these projects, we hope that they get implemented, and I think that should be the case. But again, the Lake Street Safety Ambassador is being threatened to get cut, and the public safety of my residents is being in threat because of that. So I appreciate this process because it's public. It lets our constituents know whether the mayor is going to include the priorities of our residents or not. And I think that's an important conversation to have.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate this conversation. I hope that in the future we can go back to our strategic planning process as a council so that we can come up with priorities for the entire city that we all agree on instead of these one-off, ward-specific, my constituent type of projects, because we represent an entire city. And so our budget has to be in accord to ensure that all of our residents are being served. And I think a strategic process at the beginning of our term can help us to all have the same goals, the same priorities, and instead of sort of this one-off kind of process. So that would be my request of leadership and the people who set our agenda, is that we have a strategic planning process that includes the mayor, that's public, that we can announce our priorities to everyone at the beginning of the term and then subsequently live out those values and priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. I put myself in queue, just to share that on the piece about strategic planning being an important part of how we set our goals and priorities, and then as a result our resources. That was a part of a conversation that Council President and I had with the clerk at the beginning of the term, and the highlight or the conclusion of that conversation was, strategic planning is a process we go through every 4 years. And we went through one at the beginning of the last term, and there wasn't as much of an interest there wasn't as much of an interest in revising those so soon. And so instead we went through a different type of strategic planning process at the beginning of this term. I will say, though, aside from that all members, as has been noted here, meet with the mayor as a part of the annual budget process to share their priorities. Oftentimes those priorities are specific to their ward. Sometimes they're citywide. This year is no different. All members have had the opportunity to meet with the mayor, whether that's happened yet or hasn't. And in addition to members meeting with the mayor to share their budget priorities, so do all departments. And they each bring forward proposals that are specific to their departments and their scope of work for his consideration and inclusion in the recommended budget. Naming what's important to each of the parties involved is what allows us to get closer to finding places of alignment, or at minimum to have shared understanding about what's important to everyone who's involved. So I want to thank all of you for your participation in this process and for helping us understand how we can better improve this process moving forward, and hopefully continue to engage in public around what's important to the residents who we serve and who fund our entire enterprise, so that our budgets can more and more reflect the needs of the people that we serve. Thank you. I'll next recognize Councilmember Vita.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question for Councilmember Chowdhury in regards to the transit safety ambassadors. What's Metro Transit's role in this? And isn't public safety at like the transit stations and in those transit corridors, shouldn't that be a priority for them?
Councilmember Chowdhury, would you like to address?
And also, like, shouldn't they be paying for that?
Would you like to address Councilmember Vita's question?
Yeah, through the chair, if it's all right. It's not necessarily to do the work of Metro Transit, Councilmember Vita. I recommend going back to the last budget meeting and going to the part where I discussed the transit safety priority and the vision around it. It's more so to have a coordinating function. I think Metro Transit has actually done a phenomenal job of creating new programs alongside the state delivering some funding for the trip agents. What I am seeing and what other council members have been seeing at different transit stations is they're oftentimes reacting to safety issues. For example, in a transit station in my ward, there's increasing livability issues that lead to antisocial and criminal behavior, and small businesses, residents, school-age children, transit riders are all having to deal with them, and it requires interjurisdictional efforts to address the safety concerns, both with Metro Transit, with Hennepin County. There's a little bit of interaction with MnDOT. There's a little bit of interaction that I've already had to do with our public works team, some interaction with CPED when it's connecting to small business to address these issues. And in the past, council members in a council office that I've worked in before, Ward 9, have had to hold the lion's share of coordinating all of the safety issues for a specific transit station, coordinating with the school board, all of these things, and coordinating with Metro Transit, who is willing and able to do so, but that has been unsustainable and over long term would make more sense to be a service, I believe, that belongs to the neighborhood safety department. And this is the start of the broad budget process. I'm naming that it's a priority. I see Commissioner Barnett's in the audience, and I'd love to talk to him more about the vision and what's possible. And I'm certainly flexible in this vision and what we can do and what we can pilot. But I just want to make sure that the city continues to play an integral part of safety, specifically on transit, because I do feel like as a local government in this entity, we can play a really valuable role. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to further clarify my vision.
Thank you. That's not my question. My question was simply, what is Metro Transit doing? Is Councilmember Chowdhury working with Metro Transit on the issues that she's seeing in her ward and with all these other partners, and what dollars are they bringing to the table?
Councilmember Chowdhury.
Yeah, Councilmember Vita, through the chair, I am in conversations with them. Happy to take this conversation offline to send you the information about what Metro Transit is investing in terms of resources. They have multiple on-transit folks. Our Ernesto Morales, the chief of Metro Transit, is also working hard. Been talking to him as well.
Yeah, I'm aware of community groups who get contracts with Metro Transit to do a lot of this work. And so, I'm concerned that we're duplicating services and putting money in the budget that we could be using for other things, and Metro Transit can continue to fund these groups and do that community safety work.
Before I recognize Councilmember Chowdhury for any additional comments, I'll just name, it has been a while, several months before, or since we took up markup last year to the budget. This is a budget amendment that I brought forward alongside the very freshly incoming Councilmember Chowdhury at that time. And a part of the budget proposal we submitted included its extensive details that address this exact, the core or the essence of your question. This is not duplicating efforts that Metro Transit is already engaging in. In fact, this budget amendment last year came out of a year's worth of work that Councilmember Chavez and I did through our offices with Metro Transit, along with Hennepin County and our different libraries, business owners, business associations, residents, neighbors, understanding that a safe and healthy public transit system is an important part of our city in residents being able to get from place to place, but also in our ability to have visitors in the city and have visitors feel safe being in Minneapolis. This is a pretty consistent theme that we hear across the board. It's not just my experience. One of the things that has come out of the ongoing partnerships between offices that struggle with issues along transit corridors in our work with these multi-jurisdictional partners was the need for additional resources from the city in the form of this type of coordinator position. And a part of it was also meant to address the fact that when we addressed safety issues along one specific transit station, some of those issues then moved to a different one. And so the need for a holistic approach rather than a council ward by council ward based on who's dealing with it the most was not effective. It was not working. So that's where this amendment came from. I'd really encourage anyone, any member or member of the public that's interested in further information to check out the pretty extensive budget proposal that we submitted last year.
Do you have some data along with that to show like what you succeeded at in that previous budget amendment, or do we have some results from what we've invested in?
Councilmember, I don't have the data off the top of my head, but I know it is included in the budget proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize, is that the end of your questions, Councilmember? Yes. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Chuck Tang. Just for the public so they know, so this was funded in December 2023. So this was a new proposal, and it's being proposed to get cut by the administration in the following conversation today. So this hasn't even had time to get off the ground, because before that even had the chance to get off the ground, even though we all voted for it, the ones that have returned for it, it's being proposed to get cut. So I just want the public to know that it hasn't even started because it's being proposed to get cut now. Thank you.
Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. So you never started it. There is no data or anything to support like what you had done the previous year because it never got started.
Councilmember Chavez, would you like to address the question?
Thank you, Council Vice President Chukchai. What I was saying is that this particular budget amendment, which was around the work of transit coordination between the city, Metro Transit, Chief Morales, was to help additional support to do that. The data isn't here for the position because it never existed, because it passed in December. It just is getting proposed to get cut later today in the agenda. So staff hasn't released the RFP to hire these coordinators, if that makes sense.
Got it.
Yeah.
To supplement that, I'll just add that the data that is included in the supplemental budget proposal that I mentioned earlier was data to reflect the outcomes we saw in doing that coordination work around specific safety centers. Councilmember Chavez, are you in queue again? All right. Seeing no further discussion on the motion to approve the revised version of the City Council's 2025 budget priorities for the mayor's consideration in the 2025-2026 recommended budget. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and that motion carries. Next, we will move to our final item, which is item number 4, and that is a proposal to reallocate public safety aid. Community Safety Commissioner Todd Barnett is here to present on this item today. Along with COO Anderson Kelleher. Welcome, Commissioner, and welcome, COO.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I'm Todd Barnett. I am the Commissioner of Community Safety for the City of Minneapolis. Of course, with me is also Margaret Anderson Kelleher, who is our COO. We're here today to present on the proposed reallocation of the public safety aid funds that were allocated as part of the 2024 budget process last year. And COO Margaret Anderson Kelleher will get us started with some background information.
Welcome, COO Anderson Kelleher.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, as well as committee members, and I want to thank the Commissioner for the introduction of the topic. So, many of you are familiar with this process. I'm just going to move this up here. It's easier that way. A little easier than keeping it down there. So, background. Why are we here today? In 2023, the state of Minnesota appropriated $300 million statewide for public safety specifically, one-time dollars. And of our portion of that, you might wonder, where did the rest of that money go? Counties, tribal governments, other towns and cities shared in that money. Our portion, $19 million, came to us, and the legislature said there are various and specific needs that can be included, purposes for the expenditures. And so they include community violence prevention, intervention programs, community engagement, mental health responses, victim services, training programs, first responder wellness, equipment related to fire and rescue and emergency services, and to pay for personnel and equipment costs. There are a number of things that are also prohibited, and for the public, if they want to go to the Minnesota Department of Revenue website, that is where that list is of what's prohibited. During the budget process, the council allocated approximately $10 million of that money out into programs and set aside $9 million for future allocation spending in the finance area of the city. Funding for the programs, which we'll go over a bit later in this presentation, covered numerous areas, multiple departments, and that's why I am here with the Commissioner today, because some of those departments are in the Office of Public Service as well. And with the largest amount of that allocation, $4.8 million, primarily going to the Department of Neighborhood Safety. We're going to next go through the reasons for the proposed reallocation and then cover both what the administration, what through our analysis we would ask that stays appropriated, what needs to change, and where we can see the result, we will see results from those changes and why. So, Commissioner? Here, I'll hand it for you.
No, it's still here.
Oh, we're still there, okay.
Just talking a little bit about OCS and OPS department staff capacity and limitations. There's been a lot of talk today about the 2024 budget process. Back then, I think all of you, we probably talked since then about the challenges in the allocation of this amount of funding for new programs and new pilot programs. Back then, I stated about the capacity of our staff across the enterprise to be able to implement those new programs. I've talked a little bit about the infrastructure concerns and also program design limitations. And back then, I also suggested that we give a little bit more time to the Office of Community Safety to really prioritize the allocation of this money and what could be done. So during quarters 1 and 2 of this year, our office has worked across the enterprise to evaluate if the funds as allocated could be used in ways that are both legally permissive and also aligned with staff capacity. We also examine what funds could have immediate impact now and have midterm impact on safety in Minneapolis. The overall budget outlook. The importance of this analysis was emphasized by the city's overall budget picture that began taking view some months ago. As you all are aware at this point that the current projections, which indicate a sizable budget hole for the city. And so this will require creative funding solutions to maintain the current service levels. Using OCS analysis in the budget forecast as a backdrop, we're now requesting reallocation of the entire public safety funding to align with feasible program designs, staff capacity, and also to offset the budget costs that we anticipate coming forward that will have a substantial impact on Minneapolis taxpayers. We will discuss our proposal as following. Proposed maintained allocations, the proposed amended current allocations, proposed new allocations, and proposed reallocations. I'll hand it back to our COO.
Madam Chair, we're going to start with the allocations that we propose maintaining from the 2024 budget process. And as you can see, a number of these items include staffing items. So Office of Community Safety staffing, a little under $1 million. Office of Public Service staffing, $625,000. Warehouse District Live program, $750,000. The LEAD contract, which is $250,000. Neighborhood Safety Initiatives, $200,000. Lake Street Safety Coordination, $300,000, as well as the temporary Lake Street Temporary Safety Center is also recommended to stay. So then there is another category, which is changed allocations, recommended changes to current allocations. So this maintains much of the work that is happening and what is able to be delivered within this budget year. And that's what I would stress here, is that after further analysis, and I know that the commissioner had shared during the budget process as well, concern for a number of these items. So Truth and Reconciliation, a reduction down to $300,000. It reconfigures that money to fit into the definition of the public safety aid and what we can do with it in the Truth and Reconciliation area. Cultural district ambassadors, and I do want to say Minneapolis just announced a cultural arts district ambassador grant program. This is a different thing, and want to note that on the slide. But taking that down to about half will allow, under the staffing that we have and the constraints that we have, to be able to deliver on that expectation. Crime and hate crime prevention. This money is both being recommended to be increased slightly, and you might wonder, or if you're remembering, this money went into CPED first, but the recommendation is it actually moves over to MPD to use a data-driven approach, and we can talk more about that, what that will look like. And then the public safety recruitment campaign, which has been going very well, to fund that through the end of the year, a slight increase here of $500,000 to continue that work, the 911 and MPD recruiting campaign. And so next, to cover the proposed new allocations, the commissioner is going to come back up. Chair, if that is okay with you.
Welcome back, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. So, as I stated earlier, part of this analysis is to identify areas in which funding could be beneficial immediately and in the midterm for community safety. So, 311 staffing at the Lake Street Safety Center, we're proposing to fund 2 new temporary 311 agents to staff the Lake Street Community Safety Center, which will open up later this year. And I think you've heard Director Amanda Harrington talk about that. This amount is anticipated to cover 2 years for these 2 positions, and that will coincide with the 2-year lease as well. And we're looking at the technology for the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. This technology or this funding allocation would cover the expense and cost for equipment and technology needed to coordinate and dispatch non-sworn personnel and services that are related but not distinct from a 911 response. This is similar to the DID program downtown. This is an essential function associated with the ambassadors and safety resources and other technology needed, which includes a 311 service center, network backbone, and wireless internet in a community room as well. Community engagement, this shouldn't be any surprise. It's throughout the Minneapolis Safe and Thriving Community Report. We're proposing this allocation to support further community engagement for the city, for the safety design and implementation. Amanda Harrington has been doing a lot of that work with her staff. This funding would be key to support the continuing engagement effort on issues such as the overall community safety ecosystem and corresponding projects like the safety centers. When we look at community safety pilots, this next recommendation really came out of PMI some time ago, and this is really about bringing some mental health support in 911. This would help free up our 911 staff in handling urgent calls. The potential here is for our staff and 911 to deal with those urgent calls while we provide some mental health services to some of our folks who are repeat callers or frequent callers. Generally, they're in a mental health crisis, but it's not an immediate threat to themselves or other. And in some cases, is really taking the time to work with them to maybe open the door for BCR, open the door for police. Sometimes they're calling just to talk about their day or to talk about their mental health status, and having some support with our 911 callers, call takers and dispatchers would be helpful. The second one there is really about having a response to traffic accidents where there's not an injury at all, but allowing our unsworn code compliance specialists from traffic control to respond to non-injury collisions, property-only incidents in which there's an accident, and they can provide direct response, provide support, investigate the scene, write a report, and clear traffic, allowing our law enforcement officers to attend to other important matters around community safety. Of course, this next proposal is the Police Federation contract. This proposed allocation is obviously the most significant change from the council's original allocation as part of the 2024 budget. We specifically propose allocating $9 million of the public safety aid funding to offset the known costs that will impact the city's budget going forward. This contract, of course, as all of you know, is forthcoming to council in the next couple of weeks. It will have several key reforms and also have a pay rate increase equaling 21.7% over 3 years. This contract, of course, will bring our officers in line with other law enforcement agencies, giving them a competitive salary, which is important to our retention and also recruitment. This contract, in addition to other already settled and soon to be settled labor agreements, will have a substantial impact on our budget for 2025 and beyond. This proposed allocation is intended to reduce the impact on our Minneapolis taxpayers. Joint Powers Agreement, we're proposing this allocation to help fund mutual aid from other jurisdictions for the next couple of months through the summer and beyond. In the previous years, this was a one-time budget allocation for mutual aid, but it was not in the 2024 budget. Next, I'm sorry here. The proposed reallocation. Here, I just want to say that I know that a lot of the budget amendments from 2024 were important to council, all council members. This is not to say when we look at reallocation that there were not good ideas, but we're just trying to make some, we have to, and make some tough choices here. So the collaborative public safety strategies to reduce gun violence, we're proposing to reallocate this funding. I know from talking to Councilmember Chavez, this is not it was new to me, but not new to Minneapolis, a program that was, I think, originated under former Mayor Hodges. The reason for this allocation is really about our staff capacity to really evaluate the design and implementation of this program. We're currently committed to YGVI and GVI. OCS, MPD, Neighborhood Safety, and PMI, of course, will continue to prioritize strategies to reduce gun violence in its existing programs and any forthcoming programs as well. Next, there's been a lot of talk about this one, the transit safety coordinators. Metro Transit, I think, since our budget process back in December, has really had a more robust presence in all of its stations. And they, as been talked about already, they have included having community organizations to do outreach. There's been some talk about their TRIP initiative, which started, I believe, in February of this year. These agents, of course, are helping people with the routes and information at all their transit stations. They help remind people of the code of conduct when you're on Metro Transit. And also they have the ability to administer first aid. Although I know there's been some talk about duplicate services, whether it's duplicate or not, I do think we need to give Metro Transit more time with implementing their TRIP program. And not only that, just making these tough choices, we would like to reallocate this funding. We believe that Metro Transit is seeing positive results. Of course, all of the departments in the enterprise will continue to partner with Metro Transit to increase safety on and around its transit stops. The $4 million for pilots that we are asking to reallocate, we know that pilots are essential to the success of the community safety ecosystem. And in here, we're proposing 3 pilots, two of which I've talked about already. One is the mental health support, 911. The other is having our traffic control non-sworn agents help with traffic accidents, and also reducing the ambassador program. This would put OPS and OCS at near staff capacity. Looking at that and trying to implement what we can immediately. Also looking at the Federation contract, which is an immediate need for us, and OCS is recommending funding the contract. The unassigned amount that's here of $4.9 million, of course, we're asking to reallocate that money for the contract as well, mainly to help offset the significant burden that taxpayers might feel, and also giving us more time to understand fully what the budget impact will be.
I know. Thank you. Chair Chugtai and committee members, we want to speak to both the long-term financial plan in regard to this recommendation, as well as both the projects and the administration side of this. And so this slide has been prepared to take a look at the adopted projects that are in this, and then I'm going to just go forward because this is where I wanted to end up. We have a few priorities here in the reallocation. And we've been asked often about a financial plan for the fiscal cliff created by any sort of temporary funds. And generally speaking, these recommendations that we're bringing towards you today are really about that important question. These are one-time funds, and the impact of those one-time funds going away can be quite disruptive if we were to staff up in a program or a pilot that maybe can't continue because of our almost $22 million deficit in our city budget in 2025. And so, there's I think smart uses of these dollars for one-time funding, the one-time expenditures, things like the Lake Street Safety Center, the Hate Crimes Prevention Project, and in some cases, there's funding that's actually duplicative, and that is the transit coordinator piece because of what has happened with Metro Transit, both the funding that they received through the 2023 legislative session and the program that they have been able to start implementing the TRIP program as well. And we will continue to evaluate any of these one-time expenditures and continue to talk to you about them. So the long-term effect of these recommendations are really about that right match to the right dollars at this moment in time. And so they include funding of the one-time projects like the Joint Powers Agreement for summer safety, the Community Safety Center technology, a perfect one-time use of dollars, funding temporary needs, the 311 staff at the temporary safety center on Lake Street, the funding of pilots that can be supported by current staffing levels. And that's what you're seeing in this recommendation as well. And then prioritizing community engagement as we go forward in the community safety ecosystem as we are building this new system together.
In closing, the proposal that we're bringing forward for the allocation and reallocation of the public safety aid is grounded in three critical realities for us. Of course, staff capacity, that ability to do the work that we have, especially the limitations that we have. Program design expectations, of course, the feasibility of design and implementation, and then the budget realities. And that we all are facing a budget deficit, and we have very few options as we look at where the funding will come from. At this time, we ask to move this item forward. That concludes our presentation, and I'm sure we'll have questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that presentation, Commissioner and COO. So knowing that this is a contentious item, before I make a motion on this, I will open it up for discussion and questions to staff from committee members. I will ask that we engage in discussion in a respectful manner, both with one another and with the staff that are here presenting today, and that we please refrain from or do our best refrain from speaking over members, assigning intent, and do our best to abide by our council rules and decorum as we continue with this discussion. With that, there are several members that have questions or comments. I will first recognize Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai. I'll begin by just saying a few words to my residents. I know that in this proposal, you'll see 4 out of the 7 cuts or amendments are through amendments that my office specifically authored, and this is in no way or shape. The decision was in no way or form or shape informed by my office. It wasn't made by my office. This is a cut being made by the mayor's administration, so I just want to let my constituents in particular know that while I did offer 4 out of the 7 amendments to get implemented this year, they're not being brought forward by my office. I do have 2 questions, and I'll first ask either COO Anderson Kelleher or our commissioner right here. If there were concerns about capacity, why didn't the administration just leave the funds there for next year? Because we know that public safety isn't going to be resolved overnight. We know we're going to have public safety issues going on next year. The administration could have still said, your residents matter. They matter in your neighborhood. And we know that we don't have capacity to implement them this year, but next year we will. And the administration could have decided to leave the money for next year, but instead it's being completely gut out or amended.
Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Chavez, I think if you look back at the criteria that we really used here, we are really focused in on not only just staff capacity, but also looking at what the budget forecast is as well. We also, in making these decisions, and they're tough decisions, is that what can we get done now, immediately? What can we get done midterm? And all the recommendations that we're making here are things that we think we can feasibly get done. At the same time, trying to take that burden off of the taxpayers as we look to 2025.
Thank you. I just want to note that our council members in this body are still going to have to find money for these programs next year. And now they're being threatened to get cut. And we're still going to have to go in the budget process in November, finding any money we can to make sure that our residents are safe in our neighborhoods. And again, these are projects that are being cut, or at least being threatened to get cut. And I'll be honest, like they are frustrating to the representatives, to the constituents I represent. I'll go down the list. We have Truth and Reconciliation being cut from $550,000 to $300,000. I understand that the administration's position is that we can only use some of it for public safety aid. That being said, it could have been used next year as well, because we're not going to get done with Truth and Reconciliation overnight. And I authored that amendment too. Or the Cultural District Ambassador being cut in half. Don't know where the locations are going to be at, but this is funding that I have been telling my residents that we found really hard to get in the budget because their safety matters on our cultural districts, whether you're on Franklin, Lake Street, or 38th Street. That is being cut in half. I also authored that one. Or the hate crime prevention program that is being moved from CPED to MPD for cameras. I'm not saying we shouldn't use cameras, but the program I put in was in CPED, and to develop a more comprehensive approach to address hate crime. Not everybody believes that surveillance is the way to address hate crime prevention. That can be maybe one form of it, as you and I know, with having conversations with folks on Lake and Bloomington, where you met with my constituents, small business owners in the area. The cameras for them work, but it doesn't work for everybody. For example, when Council Vice President Chugtai, Councilmember Chowdhury, and I had office hours in February at Wildfire to talk about LGBTQIA community safety, they wanted to address hate crime prevention through a non-surveillance way. And now we're cutting that by saying the only way through hate crime prevention in the city is through cameras. And I think we could have had a both-and approach, and it's something that I'm going to have a conversation with my colleagues up here of. It doesn't have to be pitting MPD cameras against a hate crime prevention program. I do have a question on the public safety recruitment. When I voted in favor of this, I believe Councilmember Vita brought it forward. My understanding of what I voted for was to support our 911 city staff. I went to an event to talk about how our 911 staff feel unsafe and they deserve, better pay. And what I voted for was funding for collective bargaining to help them. And can you explain what's happening here? I think it's getting moved from collective bargaining and maybe potential increased wages to just recruitment on a program that already existed, or did I read that incorrectly?
Chair Chuck Ty, Council Member Chavez, I think that's incorrect. In this way, hopefully we had a contract with Accenture, and that contract was for a campaign for first responders, which focused in on reimagining yourself, and that was with NPD and 911. So I'm not sure specifically what you're talking about, because we're asking to continue that campaign. That campaign will move from Accenture in August to the Office of Community Safety. And can I just say one other thing from your comments earlier, if you don't mind?
Yep.
Councilmember Chavez, in no way are we saying any of these programs aren't important. What we're trying to do is look at this, analyze it, and just these are the decisions that we've had to make in light of the budget, in light of staff capacity, in light of program design and implementation.
Thank you, Commissioner. I understand that that's maybe your stance, but to our residents, it's telling them that we don't have capacity to protect your safety on this particular budget amendment. My question, and I'll go back and ask it, Councilmember Vita brought a budget amendment last year that was for $1,350,000, and it was for 911 recruitment and retention efforts subject to collective bargaining as required. I was proud to vote in favor of Councilmember Vita's amendment. What I'm seeing here is that that money is being dissolved into a new program, or I just want to learn what that actually means into the recruitment campaign rather than retention. So that's my question.
Yep.
So, Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Chavez, two separate issues. There was a retention bonus as well as some additional money that would be collective bargained. I believe that money with 911 has been expended in terms of the bonus, but that is in an issue of collective bargaining. That is not this money. So this is taking additional money. I don't know exactly if it's from the $4 million. You could see if we go back. Let's see. It could be coming from the unassigned pool. It could come from some of the pilot pool. This is $500,000 going into that recruitment campaign.
CO, if I may, what the $1,350,000 that's on slide 4. It is included on the slide that discusses proposed amended allocations. Yep, that one. So that amount is the exact same as the 911 amendment, and so just want to make sure that there are different amendments that you're talking about, different allocations that you're talking about.
Madam Chair, we're going to have the budget director come up.
Welcome, Director.
Chair Chugtai, members of the committee, thanks for having me. Jane DeSenza, Budget Director. So, yes, the $1.35 million in the 2024 adopted budget, you can find the narrative for that in the HR part of the budget book. And that was for a variety of recruitment retention options in the public safety sector. What this proposal would do is add $500,000 to that amount, with the intention of continuing the ad placement for the public safety recruitment campaign that began in the winter, this past winter.
Okay, thank you. So just to, because I still want to get back on queue. So $1.3 million essentially is still going to go to 911 recruitment, and the additional would just go to continue the recruitment campaign.
it's $500,000 that will increase that amount so we can continue the recruitment campaign.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. The
Okay.
way I read it, I was a little confused, thinking that we were going to completely move the amendment that I was very happy to support into just the campaign that we had funded previously. Thank you so much for the clarification. I'll keep going, just because I want to let my residents know which programs are being threatened to get cut. This one was one of the most important ones that I amended in the budget last year, and it's the collaborative public safety strategies to reduce gun violence. And I'll repeat that. Collaborative public safety strategies to reduce gun violence in 2 neighborhoods in North Minneapolis, and I'll talk about the 2 neighborhoods in South Minneapolis, East Phillips and Midtown Phillips. If you've been following my residents' concerns, there has been an increase in gun violence in both East Phillips and Midtown Phillips, including this weekend. And this project was modeled after, and we were going to work, my goal was to work with administration to figure out what the best program was for this neighborhood. What Mayor Betsy Hodges did when she worked with Little Earth and folks in Northside on developing public safety proposals to reduce gun violence. And this is a program I've been talking to my residents all year long, and now it's on the chopping block, even after folks in my ward have been getting shot in a time when we need to reduce gun violence in this city. So I have committed to my residents that I'm not going to let this one go, particularly. I'm going to fight to protect them and to reduce as much gun violence as we can in our city. And if you, and Commissioner, you know, the Latino community in particular is very scared right now with the shooting of one of our community members. And we need to do everything we can to reduce gun violence, and taking this program away from them and all residents in East Phillips and Midtown Phillips isn't fair. And then, yeah, those are my comments. Want to let my residents know which priorities are being threatened to get taken away. And I understand that you may think that this doesn't mean that they don't matter, but to my residents, they feel like they don't matter when they hear this. Thank you.
Chair Chuck Ty, can I? Thank you. Chair Chavez, gun violence, of course, in any neighborhood is something that we want to address. We made a commitment to the GVI program and YGVI, which is, of course, citywide. It's a program that, you know, has been talked about here and something that we've restarted. We think that we're on a good path there instead of starting up a new program with the capacity that we have and then trying to implement this program. Thank you.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Council Vice President. I'll just point out a couple of things as to why I'm not supporting this proposal today and some of the contradictory and red flags. So first being on slide number 5, you talked about, Commissioner Barnett, the community safety pilots, which I do think is interesting that it's only framed as community safety pilots. Similar, as you mentioned, Council Vice President, I wrote a very thorough budget amendment for this particular proposal, and it wasn't called community safety pilots, it was called community safety center pilots, because these were tailored to basically support the unarmed safety services that are supposed to be relegated at the new South Minneapolis Community Safety Center that's opening up in my ward. And many of you are aware, we passed a resolution that said we want to have the opening of the 3rd precinct alongside the comprehensive side on the same day. But also in the mayor's Friday proposal, we didn't get a budget amount of what it would cost to actually do the layout for the comprehensive side. So this is where that $4 million came into play, to say, let's have a basis for, you know, funding the non-armed services that must be placed here. So it's very troubling that we're removing the very dollars that is supposed to not make this precinct or the center a rebrand of the 3rd precinct. And on June 5th, the Public Health and Safety Committee actually received an update from OCS leadership and staff, where they laid out an update about the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center in particular. And in their timeline, it even mentions they're going to, well, they're supposed to, June is over, June request dollars for the community safety center work, these particular dollars, public safety aid dollars. It also has it for pilots there too for the fall of 2025 timeline. It also has an asterisk that says they were planning to request these dollars as well. So I have lots of concerns about defunding the very dollars that's going to guarantee that it's not just a third precinct that's going to be moving forward. And now the new opening of, I believe you all said, spring of summer of 2025. Removing this funding essentially gets us closer to having a third precinct in spring of summer 2025. So very concerned about that piece. I also want to flag the community safety pilots, again, which are completely different from the community safety center pilots. From my understanding, PMI also received not only a transfer of about $200,000 or so from the neighborhood safety department last budget cycle, there's also federal dollars that they receive, around $2.5 million, to also do alternative pilots. So it seemed that PMI, based off of what they presented last year, they had resources to be able to do pilot work that doesn't require us repurposing public safety aid that we already relegated to other priorities for whatever this is. So I was very concerned about the PMI repurpose and didn't understand what the need was for that. Also for the OCS personnel reallocations, I would just name outright my skepticisms related to that. We keep hearing about staffing capacity and infrastructure, and I've had this conversation with you, Commissioner Barnett, where I have a little bit of skepticism in trusting that is this body last budget cycle, specifically when it came to neighborhood safety department, actually brought forward several positions to say, let's support the infrastructure. And we were told by you and Director Brown that we did not need that. And now, this is in email records, we learned that Director Brown did let you know those resources were needed for those infrastructures, those 2 FTEs. And you said, no, we're not going to move forward with that, and told us something different. So I have a little bit of distrust of reconciling, this body has been showing up and bringing budget amendments to support the infrastructure and being given misinformation from our own leadership around how best to show up for that. So I'm concerned about the personnel allocations here. And then also even a little bit of the contradiction that I heard a little bit, or just red flag, around the joint powers agreement, which is named a little bit different here than when COO Anderson Kelleher came up here. You mentioned this appropriations is also to go to help Safe Summer. We just also learned in PHS this recent budget cycle that Safe Summer, at least on the MPD side, is being postponed to the end of July. So that's already halfway through the summer. Why are we paying for something? It's like, is this reflected in that new adjustment of the postponing of Safe Summer? Because we literally just got that update last week. So there's a number of things where it just don't make sense in terms of how did we land here, the lack of engagement with council members around the intention of our budget priorities. We did thorough discussions and budget amendment process last year that is being responsive to our constituent needs, like big projects, capital projects like the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. And we're literally seeing dollars be repurposed to fund solely one thing, a police contract. So I have no interest in defunding our comprehensive safety initiatives to fund armed law enforcement. That moves us away from comprehensive public safety in itself. So I would really appreciate if we're going to vote on this today. I'm not supporting it. Going to let you all know, I think we all have talked about is different variations of wanting more time to think through different appropriations or allocations, because I definitely don't agree with what the administration has brought before us, because some of these pieces just don't make sense based off of prior information given to this body. So if we are taking it up today, won't be supporting it, but I also would love to have some time, if there's a postponement or a delay, to also really think through how we can bring counter amendments to this, so that, yes, we're acknowledging the toll that this will place on taxpayers, which again, it's great to see the administration bring forth this counter proposal. It would have been great to see this last year, and also anticipation of, you knew you were in contract negotiations with the Police Federation. You should have anticipated a funding per package that also didn't take public safety aid that was already repurposed into consideration. So it sucks that we're trying to play cleanup duty for mistakes made in terms of fiscal management on the administrative side, but that's where we're at. And I would love to take some time to figure out how to do that cleanup duty appropriately, but this is not the answer right here.
I caught a question for COO Anderson Kelleher. Commissioner Barnett? In addressing the joint powers agreement and
Chair Chuck Ty, sorry, and Councilmember Wansley, I don't remember exactly what COO Margaret Anderson Kelleher said, but I can talk about the joint powers agreement. Maybe there was just a misstatement there. In the past, we have had mutual aid agreements. Those mutual aid agreements has helped us with law enforcement throughout the city. So I think like last summer, I think we had an agreement with the State Patrol. In the past, we've had agreements with Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. This is not money for Safe Summer. What I was saying about the joint powers agreement is if we have a joint power agreement, it can help us this summer and the months beyond.
Chair Chuck Ty, I don't think I misspoke. I mentioned summer as part of the JPA, so I just want to be clear. I do want to say, council members, that we could not have anticipated where the negotiation with the police contract would have landed. We would have had to have a crystal ball. It's broken, mine is at least. And why are we here today is because that contract is now coming before you. We know what the impact of that contract is going forward. That $9 million will be used $3 million in 2025, $3 million in 2026, $3 million in 2027, and that is about almost one levy point. It's about 3/4 of a levy point in terms of property taxes. And so it is really an offering of being able to not have the property tax hit even harder to people who are least able to pay it. And that is usually renters, senior citizens, people in low income. And so that is why we're bringing it now. That $9 million, there's no way we could have anticipated what that dollar amount is.
I'm sorry, Council Vice President, just a quick thing on clarifying that piece, because we'll have conversations about the police contract in the coming days, but the $9 million is only one part. We haven't even talked about the back pay. So we also know that $9 million is not finite for the cost of this contract too. So we're hopeful to hopefully receive some of the information around the back pay. It seems like staff hasn't been able to provide that, and knowing that that back pay is also going to officers who've possibly left the force as well.
So, Madam Chair, if I could, I believe if we ask the city attorney, I know there was a statement in a news story that said that could go to officers who've left the force. That is not the understanding of the city, and I want to be very clear about that. And furthermore, any sort of retro pay, including just wage increase or any of the back pay wage increase or overtime, is accounted for in the current MPD budget. We are talking about lessening the impacts going forward on property taxes through this proposal.
Is that the end of your questions, Councilmember?
Yep.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I have a question for Commissioner Barnett, and it's this, that I heard from some of my colleagues today for the second time. They also said this in the previous budget committee, that they have top priorities that they funded through public safety aid money. Commissioner Barnett, can we feasibly implement those priorities given the scope, the scale, the resources, and since this is one-time money, can we implement those programs with the dollars that they allocated?
Chair Chuck Ty and Councilmember Palmisano. The answer is a little bit complicated in this way, and the only reason I say it's complicated is that you could start to implement those programs. And the approach that we've taken, and I believe in either PHS or AEO, I mentioned the process that we've taken the first and second quarter, and that is building up the infrastructure for neighborhood safety to be able to do the work that it currently has and to be able to take on new projects. With the budget forecasts and with how robust it takes to start some of the new programs, the answer is no.
Yeah, Councilmember Cashman had mentioned earlier that it was in last year's budget, some of these things, but I think it's really important to understand how it came into this budget. So I don't believe any of my colleagues had engagement with staff prior to bringing some of their amendments forward last year for this money. Commissioner Barnett warned us at the time that many of them were not even within the capacity of the Office of Community Safety, nor were they recommended by staff back then. And my colleagues went forward anyway, but the commissioner made these concerns clear last year when you were like a month new on the job. My colleagues refused to recognize subject matter experts, and you proceeded with these allocations despite these warnings, and you passed dozens of amendments without prioritizing any of them. So the commissioner and OCS staff are returning to us now after analyzing what's feasible, after hearing you from the budget amendments of last year, and recommending against going forward with all but a small fraction of them that they think are realistic. I hear you, and I hear your disappointment to my colleagues too. But the things that they're recommending are things that can help us now. Their recommendations strike a balance between short-term needs like summer safety and longer-term needs like the Community Safety Center. So from what I have heard from your presentation, it is our responsibility to make decisions that are informed by facts and grounded in reality, and it makes sense to use one-time money to backfill things like increases in a contract, especially when it is sound budgeting. It doesn't make sense to allocate one-time money for ongoing programs that we can't even implement this year. So I don't think we should have to lay off staff or reduce department capacity to avoid using public safety aid for something that it can be used for. We have the means to avoid raising taxes by reallocating this funding, and we should absolutely do so. The other point I was going to make, though I didn't want to make it without Councilmember Wansley here, is the $2.5 million grant that she just referenced. We could not accept that money. And Ms. Hasbergen is here now, actually, in case there are more questions about that. But that $2.5 million doesn't exist in the city of Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai, and thank you, Commissioner Barnett. Thank you, COO Kelleher. I will say it's really disheartening to see proven community safety initiatives like the Ambassador Program that is modeled after the highly successful Downtown Improvement District Ambassador Program that's been going on for years, being defunded when we really need comprehensive public safety initiatives, both police and non-police initiatives across the city. That I do understand that we need to come up with $9 million to fund the police budget or for the contract this year. So I'm wondering if you looked at any ways to fund the police union contract from existing departmental ongoing funding sources and not solely the one-time budget. I mean, I see that we have almost $5 million in the one-time funding that hasn't been allocated. Absolutely support using that to offset this. Can we come up with the other $4 million from unspent departmental budgets for ongoing expenses instead of just a one-time expense?
Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Cashman, I know you used the word defund. I'll disagree with that. We looked at what is it that we can do immediately. And these are tough choices. That's what we think we can do. We recognize the DID program has been successful. It's something that we want to model, but we can't implement the entirety of that ambassador program right now. But we can start out and get some of the things done. As far as where other funds are, that's not a question I can answer right now. As far as do we have $9 million in another place, I'm not aware of that. Oh, I'm sorry. Someone better qualified to answer that question.
We'll invite Budget Director Jane DeSenza.
Thank you. Through the chair, Councilmember Cashman. The only other options really are to increase property taxes to pay for new expenses. This is for the Police Federation contract or for any increased expense, or to find those dollars elsewhere in the budget. And so if the council wishes to pursue cuts in order to pay for that, that would be something that the council has the authority to do. But it would need to articulate what those are.
Okay, thank you. And we have approved, this might be for you also, Director DeSenza, we have approved other union contracts this year that also had big salary increases. I think the LIUNA contract was in the 20% increase as well. And knowing that we didn't budget last year for such large salary increases in our union contracts, how did we fund those other union contracts this year? How did we fill the gap?
Sure. Through the chair, Councilmember Cashman, we fund all labor union increases the same way. So for a department that's impacted by those pay increases, their general fund existing dollars will be tapped first. And then because we budget, we revisit the current service level budget annually, we're able to build those increases into the current service level budget. So for the Federation contract as well as the 363 laborers contract, those increases to their pay are part of that 2025-2026 presentation that I gave this body in May.
So the MPD's general fund allocation was tapped first to fund this $9 million gap?
Through the chair, the contract has not yet been approved, but there, if and when it is, and there's back pay and increased pay going forward, it will impact the police department's budget first. There would not be a transfer of funds just because the contract is approved.
Mm-hmm. Okay. COO Anderson Kelleher, you said that cutting funding in half, which I do consider defunding, cutting funding in half for the Cultural District Ambassador Program, which I call the Safety Ambassador Program, would allow you to deliver on implementing that program. So can you speak to how you plan to implement that program? Because it was dedicated for 10 pilots, 10 areas throughout the city at $3 million total, $300,000 in each of the 10 areas. For me, that's Lake and Hennepin, which borders Ward 10 and Ward 7, a very critical nightlife area. You know that we're spending $750,000 on Warehouse District Live, which is also in a very critical nightlife area. I believe that there are other nightlife areas like Lake and Hennepin that deserve to have nightlife ambassador presence. And in the RCA, I've now seen that the spending is proposed to be cut in half and to be restricted to just 2 geographic areas instead of 10. So I'd like an understanding of what that means.
Yes, Chair and Councilmember Cashman, what we're looking at is where can we immediately or soon implement and not have it in all 10. So there are 2 geographical areas in which we think that we can implement these programs.
I'll also mention, I've met with DID on this, about their ambassador program many times. They actually have a contract for PV Plaza that's only $100,000 a year for ambassadors at PV Plaza. So the money actually goes a long way. That funds thousands of ambassador hours in 2024 just at PV Plaza for $100,000. So when we're asking for $300,000 for ambassadors at Lake and Hennepin, it's not too much to ask, it's not unreasonable, and it greatly relieves MPD. The 5th Precinct is having such a hard time getting to 911 calls. Their response rates are very slow because they have to prioritize violent crime. They have to be there for cases of domestic violence. They have to be there for disputes. And people who are on the street who have a smaller level safety incident happened to them aren't getting any response. So ambassadors are a way that we can cover that gap and relieve MPD of the pressure that they feel. It's a proven model that's been working downtown. We have the RFP and the contracts from the Downtown Improvement District. They are ready and willing to provide us with technical assistance to put out an RFP. So for me, it's just really hard to understand what the staff capacity holdup can be when we have a model of this RFP. We have actors who have been doing this for over 10 years downtown and who are ready to help us implement it in other parts of the city. And that's what I'm really struggling with today, is why we should be defunding an initiative that has so much potential to help with safety across the city. Okay, if I can ask one last question,
Council member, just excuse me, Commissioner Ciola, would you like to address?
I didn't
that?
feel like there was a question.
Okay, continue.
I'm supportive of the Joint Powers Agreement mutual aid proposal. I think that's a really good idea. My district borders St. Louis Park and Edina, and so we have a great need for support from these other jurisdictions, and I know it happens in one-off cases, but that it's not in format. I recently asked our attorneys if we have any joint powers agreements in effect for Uptown, which they said there are none. Can you advise on if there are any in the works, or how we can expect that money to be spent this year? Because I understand it would probably take a long time to develop an agreement like that.
Chair Chuktai, Councilmember Cashman, where we have had previous mutual aid agreements or a joint powers agreement, I think there are documents which we can probably modify and have those available quickly. I've had informal conversations with some law enforcement agencies, but nothing formally, mainly because of just knowing, do we have any funding to do any type of mutual aid in which we can have a joint powers agreement?
Okay, thank you.
I'll call on the city attorney.
Thank you, Chair Chuktai. Just one point of clarification on the, not that question from Councilmember Cashman, but the previous question. And it was a point that was made during budget deliberations last year, but for the committee's benefit, note that the funding source for something like the Downtown Improvement District and the Ambassador Program that's furnished through that is perhaps not an apt comparison. The Downtown Improvement District is a special services district established by state law through a process in state law. It's funded and paid for by the commercial and industrial property owners in the district through service charges imposed on them, who see benefit in paying this money for a whole suite of services, including the Ambassador Program. And so I think different from a funding perspective, not from a substantive does the model work perspective, but from a funding perspective, it's a apples and oranges, I think, to some extent.
Thank you for that clarification, Attorney Nielsen. I fully understand how the Special Service District is funded, how the Downtown Improvement District's model is funded, and we're proposing to fund that, through the taxpayer money because of how effective of a service it is. And it was funded this year at the tune of $3 million. So when the council budgets for something, we expect it to be implemented. Now we're halfway through the year saying it's going to be cut. So how do we plan for future years and for these programs if we don't have certainty about their implementation and their longevity?
Chair Tuktai, Councilmember Cashman, I think when you say how can you be assured, I think part of that for me is I tried to early on, I think end of November, beginning of December, talk about some of the challenges that I saw. I didn't have the details of it, but I at least tried to forecast that there would be challenges with the amount of money. I think it was $4.8 million that was allocated, and the majority of that was for new programming. And so I think part of it is from my standpoint, going forward, would be to probably as I go through these amendments is to sit down and say, here's where I think things are.
Thank you. Councilmember Jenkins?
Thank you, Chair Chugtai. And thank you, City Attorney, for that explanation. I was going to bring up the same thing, that the Downtown Improvement District is paid for by the commercial businesses. And I think I've been an advocate for ambassadors, DID in communities for at least minimum 15 years. And I think if we can't rely on the businesses in some of our communities, which I know it's a huge challenge for them, that we have to have other jurisdictions be a part of the funding of these ambassador programs, these cultural ambassador programs. Some people call them safety programs. And I do think that cleaning the streets and eyes on the streets and all of those things do provide safety and awareness for folks. But we have to have other contributors to this process, including the businesses that want to benefit from that safety as well. But my question was around the hate crimes and crime prevention reallocation. I'm sorry, but $175,000 doesn't seem like a small or insignificant decrease to me, given that it's only $375,000. But I'm not sure what data-informed prevention means. Can someone please explain that?
Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Jenkins, I think when we think of hate crimes, I think there's two different things. One is the legal definition of a hate crime in order to prosecute someone that way. And what I think here, when we look at data, we can look at, for instance, what's happening surrounding a mosque, right? It might not be technically legal terms a hate crime, but I think people there would feel it as a hate crime. Some of the instances that we've had where these situations have occurred have been with some folks who are mentally ill, and they focus in on different places. So I think just looking at the data, acknowledging that the crime itself might not be technically charged out as a hate crime. It could be instances where we see a repeated disorderly conduct or assaults in a certain place, and it doesn't reach that definition. But we know that if we focus in there, that we can prevent it from happening or being charged out as a hate crime, if that's helpful. But it is an increase of $175,000 that is going, not a decrease. So it goes from $200,000 to $375,000.
Thank you for that correction. So, and then who is going to be carrying out this work?
Most of this work would move from CPAD to MPD.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, historically, I was under the impression hate crime prevention lived in the Civil Rights Department, and so I'm just really confused now. That's what my whole confusion is stemming from.
Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Jenkins, you are correct. Hate crimes, a lot of the hate crimes work does live in civil rights. In fact, we have a federal grant that right now is being implemented through civil rights. Honestly, Madam Chair, I don't know who the maker of this amendment was that went to CPED. I think that CPED may have had some confusion about how to implement a hate crimes program, and that's why you see a change to this, both an increase and in terms of who is going to carry out the work in this recommendation.
Yes, so this proposal allocated this amount of money, $200,000, to CPED, and that was an amendment that was authored by Councilmember Chavez, myself, I believe Councilmember Chowdhury, I believe Councilmember Wansley, and Councilmember Osman. And the purpose of putting it in CPED, which, again, there were extensive conversations that were had with CPED prior to this budget amendment being made. It was around offering technical assistance and grants to individual through a public process, so that places that were vulnerable to hate crimes could invest in preventative measures and could receive, site analysis along with using, technical assistance grant money to invest in preventative things such as, yes, cameras, but also, perhaps it's an updated security system, perhaps it's new locks, perhaps it's changing the points of entry, perhaps it looks like reconfiguring, parking lots or things like that. So that was the purpose of putting it in CPED instead of within MPD. Does that address that question?
Yeah, thank you. It explains the rationale. However, I don't think CPED has the capacity to say what security measures and what cameras should go where. I just don't think that expertise lives in that department.
For sure.
Personally.
Understood. I see Councilmember Chavez in queue for a priority motion. Councilmember Jenkins, before we go to him, did you have any further questions or comments?
No. Yeah, that satisfies my inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez, are you in queue still?
Council Vice President, I just want to make sure I authored the amendment, so I just wanted to add some clarification. I see a lot of other people on queue, so I don't want to budge the line, but if it's helpful, I can give some input.
Councilmember, would you like that? Would that help address your inquiry?
It's your committee, Madam Chair, but sure, yes, I would love to have that answer. Yes.
Excellent. Councilmember Chavez, go ahead. Please make it brief.
Council Vice President Chuck Tay, and my office had been meeting with the director of CPED, Eric Hansen, and they were well underway of being able to implement this program. So the concerns of staff not being able to do this, my conversations with CPED is that while it may have taken a little bit longer throughout the year to implement it, they had the capacity to do this, and they were going to do this. And you can't purchase cameras, lighting necessarily for like a private or a nonprofit entity, but you could do site analysis. So I just wanted to correct the record to make sure that public safety aid can't be used for that, but it can be used to do site analysis, support mosques, synagogues, locations who are vulnerable to hate crimes. So that was the goal of this program. That is now being used just for cameras. I'm not saying we shouldn't use it for cameras, but the program was for site analysis. That was what was written in the budget amendment. That's why it's CPED. It can't be used for cameras. That's just not allowed under public safety aid and probably our taxpayer dollars. So I just want to make sure that that was said out loud. And CPED had the capacity to do it because I had been meeting with them about it and they were going to do it. So I just want to clarify that too.
Wonderful. Next, I'll recognize Council President Payne.
Thank you, Vice President Chugtai. I feel like this, well, first, I'll just acknowledge my first reaction to this was just like sheer outrage, to just be honest. I think defund is not an inappropriate word to describe what's happening here. But I think, upon reflection, a lot of this proposal is grounded in a couple of assumptions that I think really need to be explored. Assumption one, and I heard it referenced here, was the ability to meet expectation. And I think that part of the challenge here is that even just in this discussion of the other amendment that I wasn't an author of and I wasn't familiar with, there was clearly a misunderstanding of the expectation of how those funds were supposed to be deployed. But for me, on the Cultural District Safety Ambassador Program, my expectation wasn't that 10 districts would be deployed in year one. My expectation is that we would get these districts launched as we had capacity to do it, and we would have the resources to do it across all 10 districts, whatever time that took. And one of the big provisions of that safety aid is that there isn't a time gap. It didn't need to be all spent within 1 year. So, it would not be accurate to say that my expectation was that this all gets spent in one budget year, and if we can't have the capacity to do it all in 1 year, then let's reset expectations. My expectations are that these will be deployed in the time that it takes to deploy them. The other thing that is really troubling for me is, and we talked about this a little bit one-on-one, but if we go to slide 5, community safety pilots, implementing 2 previously recommended pilots, mental health support for 911 callers, and non-sworn accident response. I had to refresh my memory because I'm pretty sure I'm the one that worked on the budget proposal for that, because I was a staff member at the time in the PMI department, Office of Performance and Innovation at the time. And, I'm sitting on this dais because we experienced the administration slow walking our work. So I'm very happy to see that, hey, we're funding this now, but we proposed that funding in the summer of 2020. And here we are 4 years later, promoting this as a big new thing that we're gonna do. And I'm saying this from personal experience, that work was slow walked to the point that I was outraged enough to have to run for office, right? And fortunately, we were able to have enough energy behind BCR to get that launched. Now it's been really well received, but at the time, that was also getting slow walked. And so there's a big difference between, and by the way, we had the capacity to implement that work. We were held back from implementing that work. And so when we're on the dais now, when I sit on this side instead of presenting, I'm not as intimately aware of the capacity, right? So we just have to go on word that the capacity is there or it's not there. But I know from lived experience at the staff level, that capacity can sometimes have some political spin on it, right? And I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but I'm just saying that's a caution. And I think for other people who haven't had that lived experience of working at the staff level, there are times when you are extraordinarily busy in this institution and you really don't have capacity, and there are people doing sleepless nights trying to get work done. And there's times where there's a little bit more slack and you can actually take on a little bit more. And so one of the big things about where the state of this proposal is right now is I'm glad we're having this conversation in public right now, right? Because I think there's probably some room for us to collaborate and find a solution, because I think there's a lot of shared goals that we all have up here. I don't think this is fully baked, right? This proposal as presented to us right now today with this type of defunding to this important of programming, this is not fully baked to move forward with. So if we're going to be forced to vote on this today, I'm going to be voting no. But I do think there's actually room to solve our challenge, because I think there's some collective support behind both funding all of these alternatives to create a comprehensive safety system for our city. I think there's just universal agreement to that. And getting to some point where we have a healthy collaboration with police and non-police. And that's part of what this contract funding is about, right? Is how do we have all of these pieces fitting together? And I think that we're all pretty committed to figuring that out. I just don't think this proposal is baked enough for that yet.
Thank you, Council President. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chavez. He has removed himself. Oh. There we go. Sorry. Councilmember Osman.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Commissioner, for giving us presentation. I, respect your work and other staffs. Really, your input is very important. Same way as our input is also important. No one knows my ward better than me. Really, no one. What I see and how to solve the issue is what I come forward when it comes to the budget, and I believe that, last year, every council member, what they brought through is what they have vetted, what they have talked to their residents, what they have talked to the staff, and that's what we put forward, right? And now you guys are coming back because of the department staff capacity limitation. I understand it's a new department. I understand the work you do. It's really a tough work. But cutting the budget and making things like things that work in my ward, coming back to me and saying, well, this is not going to work because I don't have a time, or I'm limited to this, I'm limited to that. It doesn't work for the resident. It doesn't work for me. We talked about the crime, hate crime at 2 mosques that had been burned. We, synagogues, different religious places get funded, burned and vandalized. And so I think with those 3 mosques during that time in my ward, and Ward 2 also, that had vandalism. And for us, stepping back and saying that, well, we got to do something about this, and this is the solution to solve it. It's one way to solve the problem and to serve the resident. Also, the part that gets difficult, and I think I communicate this with you and also your staff, thank you for working with our office to really, some of the money we allocated last year to get out of the door, because this is the time we need the most. It's summertime, the people are outside. What also makes it difficult was that when we allocate things and we want to address the issue right away, because of the capacity, because of the limitation, things do not follow the timeline we wanted. Sometimes RFP go out in October, and it's not really great. We're not being sufficient. We're not being to that. So just want to make that comment and say that with respect to your proposal and the staff proposal. You have a very good point, but at the same time, we also, as a council members, know the ward and our district more than anyone else. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Councilmember Vita.
Thank you. I just first want to say I believe staff when they say they don't have the capacity to implement programs, right? Like, I don't think anyone here is intentionally trying not to implement programs that will help our city. I can't speak to what a contractor for the city of Minneapolis's experience was 4 years ago, but I do believe in the staff that I've been fortunate enough to work with, that if they say they can't implement something or need more time, I don't feel like anyone said we can't. I feel like what's been said is we don't have time right now. And there has been so much turnover here at the city of Minneapolis since I've been here for 2.5 years. And turnover equals, like time to do stuff. If you have an overhaul in the entire department, then yes, you're not going to have the capacity to build up $1 million programs in the right way. I'm a huge advocate for the DID work. But I voted for it. I was happy to vote for it. I'd love to see it implemented on Laurie, which is the area that it would be activated in on my ward. But I also would rather have Director Nelson Brown figure out what's happening with the current services we have on Laurie Avenue and the programs that we are investing money in. So I'd rather hear from her about what the current service level is doing for me. And it doesn't mean that we don't have DID in the future. It doesn't mean that we don't have some of these other programs that, this money was allocated to that we were told last year, they might not happen. So I'm happy to see that some stuff can happen and then some stuff is delayed. I just don't want people, the general public, to feel like these things are never going to happen. What's been said to us today before this body is that we can't do it right now. It doesn't mean it's never going to happen. And then just a question, with the changes, will there be any layoffs or will anyone lose their jobs?
Chair Chuck Tai, Councilmember Vita, my basic understanding is that the sources that we have for funding are, of course, the public safety aid and the enterprise. So throughout the enterprise there's funding, and then the levy. So if we're not getting the funding from the public safety aid, you'll have to get it from the levy, and that means increasing the levy. And so I think that part is important. If we're not getting it from the levy, we're not getting it from the public safety aid, then I think $9 million forces us to make some tough decisions about programming and about layoffs. You want to add?
Okay. I don't think that was my question, but.
Madam Chair, I think what I heard you ask, Councilmember Vita, is the changes in what are proposed here, either reductions, reallocations, or keeping things the same, in some cases increasing. Is anyone going to lose their job if you vote yes on this proposal?
Correct.
And the answer to that is no. No one is going to lose their job or be let go or be laid off if you vote yes on this proposal, because these things have not been implemented. And so there's not contracts associated with them. There are not employees associated with them.
So there's not a program that we're going to have to say, you're done, there's no more, or any of that?
Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Vita, correct.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I put myself in queue. I have several questions. COO Anderson Kelleher, I'm so sorry if you'll come back. The first one is for you and perhaps for Budget Director DeSenza. There was a comment made earlier during discussion around this money being used to backfill. And I think it would be really helpful if you laid out one more time the $9 million that we're talking about here to pay for the Federation contract. Is it, what is it for? Is it for 2025? Is it for something else?
Chair Chugtai and committee members, it is going forward, the $9 million. So the $9 million will assist. Right now, we all face a nearly $22 million deficit, a 6.1% levy increase with nothing else happening in our budget. If you so choose to vote yes on this proposal, $3 million for 2025, 2026, and 2027 will go into the budget to help pay for and ease us into the cost of the contract over time. Should you not do that, then there are really very few choices left, and the major choice is likely further levy increase and further property tax increase.
Now, in easing us in over time, I appreciate that framing. But by over time, we're really talking about we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do in 2026 because we're using one-time money to pay for a one-time cost in 2025. So, just from the information I received from Commissioner Barnett to myself and Councilmember Koski when we met with him and asked him some questions, and he sent some follow-up information. The cost impact impact in 2025 is about $9.2 million. And I'm curious if you can speak to the discrepancy between 9.2 and 9 million that we're seeing here.
So, Madam Chair, and I think I will have Director DeSenza come up. I think where you'd be looking for that $3 million potentially is the budget of 2028, because this takes you through up to 2028 with $3 million each year. You could choose to use the entire, I suppose, $9 million in 1 year in 2025, but then the cliff is still pretty large to climb back up with property taxes. What is built into our budgets going forward, and even that 6.1% levy increase, is at the very least, I believe, 2.5% in wage increases. So there is a gap between that 2.5% increase, and I don't have that off the top of my head for the police department, what that amounts to. So already some money has been accounted for going forward. It is really about easing so that you do not have to, unless you choose to, raise property taxes further than already going to be necessitated by this budget.
So $9 million spread out over 3 years, so approximately $3 million every year. The cost in 2025 is still $9.2 million. So then we're talking about finding $6.2 million elsewhere, likely through property taxes anyway. Yes?
So, Madam Chair, I think what you look at when you look at the full cost of that contract is being fully staffed up to the charter amendment number. We are nowhere near that number, and although we probably will, and MPT probably will use much of their budget, there has often been budget savings that helps buy down in the last few years that impact. And maybe Ms. DeSenza would like to add further.
And certainly understand that there are costs that are absorbed through vacancies, but we still budget for the full charter amount, right? So that's where the question on, so we're still talking about a raise in property taxes to cover that 6 million gap.
Chair Chugtai, council members, there's any number of ways that the council could decide to pay for this increase. The department has proposed one way to ease us into that increase, which would be in keeping with how we've handled the fire department SAFER grant, for example, where we have a grant for 3 years for 15 firefighters in our long-range financial plans, our 5-year financial direction. We have accounted for those firefighters to come onto the general fund in future years when that grant ends. So if you want to think about it that way, it's not an unprecedented action to take.
Although in 2025, the SAFER grant is going to expire, and so in this upcoming year, those 15 firefighters that you're talking about are going to be included as general fund revenue or general fund expenses in this year's budget for the fire department, just as an example.
Chair Chugtai, yes, so they're coming through it would be a budget proposal to add those to the general fund, but we are able to plan for them in the long run because we know about it in advance. So in that same way, we plan for 5 years for personnel costs for all city departments, including the police department.
So I want to just loop back to the $6 million from that will need to be covered for the current service level cost to impact in 2025. The current proposal or the current planning that the finance department and the mayor's office and the administration are thinking about includes paying for that $6 million through increasing the levy or something else.
Chair Chugtai, I'm not going to get ahead of the mayor's August budget recommendation. OCS is proposing one way of beginning to pay for that.
Understood. Thank you. And then if we, Commissioner Barnett, I think this next one is for you. Going back to slide 5 where we talk about the joint powers agreement, $500,000 with other jurisdictions. Understand that this has been a part of our practice for several years now. It's become an increasingly important practice and something we've used state resources for, at least in my 2.5 years here. In the 2024 existing budget for the Minneapolis Police Department, there's $3,772,994. So $3.75 million in the police department's budget for exactly this use. We're sitting at the end of June right now. Are you saying that we have run out of all $3.75 million that we allocated for this exact purpose? And that's why we need the additional 500?
Chair Chuck Chai, I would have to go back and look at what our expenditures are in that particular area. I don't have that exact answer for you right now.
Wonderful. Clerks, can we note that for administrative follow-up, please? Thank you. I'm gonna hold the rest of my questions as we can continue to discuss them offline. And last in queue I see right now is Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Council Vice President. I just wanted to, my last comment on the Safety Ambassador Program, because it wasn't mentioned earlier, but Council President Payne and I actually worked really hard on this particular budget amendment, and it included talking and meeting with the Office of Community Safety. So we met with staff from the Neighborhood Safety Department about this budget amendment in particular. Actually, we consulted with them. We asked them how this could happen and what they needed to make this project happen. So the Council President and my office worked really hard to get staff input on getting this project off the ground, and they told us what they needed to get this project done. And those were the positions that Councilman Wansley keeps talking about, that Commissioner, you and the former COO, Heather Johnston, said you didn't need, while Luana Nelson Brown said, this is what I need to get these off the ground. So I just want to make it clear, we consulted with the Office of Community Safety. We were told what we needed to get these projects off the ground. Council President Payne and I believe Councilman Murkowski proposed staff positions that were then recommended by OCS to not fund, and now we're in this position of limbo. So we did consult with staff. We were told what they needed to get this done, which is why we proceeded with the budget amendments, and then we're told that we did not need the staff positions because it wasn't being asked at this time, and now we're in this position of cutting programs and defunding them. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion right now, I'm going to offer some quick comments and then make a motion to continue item number 4 one more cycle. As I shared with you all via email this morning, I've had the chance to review the options in considering this proposal and engage in high-level discussions with Vice Chair Koski, Council President Payne, Commissioner Barnett, and Mayor Fry since we were first made aware of this proposal. And what we see here in front of us today and in ongoing conversations, what's become really clear is that there's 3 options in front of us. It's either to raise property taxes or use this one-time public safety aid or repurpose existing resources. And the proposal we see here in front of us, supported by several of these conversations, is the administration has a very clear position in pursuing the second option, in pursuing the use of one-time public safety aid to fill this gap. I think that there is another way that we can move forward here that both finds the resources that the Office of Community Safety has outlined here today and ensures that existing programming doesn't get cut, that nobody loses their job. In reviewing our financial reports and our budget books going back to 2017 and looking at what our spending looks like and what our budgets look like versus what actually gets spent and goes out the door, there are options here, and in going back and reviewing so far back, including 3 years prior to the pandemic and 3 years after, really seeing how those spending habits are not a fluke or a rarity as a result of the pandemic. Over in each year over the last 7 years, our city budget, and specifically our general fund, is underspent by somewhere between 2 and 9%. There are ongoing resources across the enterprise that go unused year after year, meaning there isn't a person or a program, a person who has a job or a program that we're trying to get out the door that just doesn't get used. And so to pay for this proposal using and trying to find dedicated resources instead of creating fiscal cliffs for us to address next year, the year after, and in following years, there is a far more responsible thing that we can do here in finding unused resources year over year. I didn't bring a substitute motion today on this proposal, as I think it's really important, and I'd really like to engage in further conversations with colleagues and with the administration, with the commissioner, with the mayor, in finding some consensus on how we can move forward in a more responsible way. So with that, I will move to continue this item by one cycle. Do I have a second?
Second.
The item has been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? I will first recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that we should be mindful of the mayor's budget process here. If you delay this today, it won't be possible to consider this proposal in the mayor's budget planning. This is the actual budget planning that comes up with a levy and comes up with a proposal. And this isn't just about inside baseball, what we're sending to the mayor, what the mayor is sending to us. This is about what goes out in public. So I'd like, if you are willing, to ask Director DeSenza to explain that better than I could. What are the impacts of a delay at this point? If that's all right with you.
We'll come back.
Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Palmisano. Yes, so we're about to wrap up budget presentations to the mayor, and that means that we're entering the decision-making phase for the budget. And so depending on when the council delayed this to or made decisions about this, we would be too far into the decision-making process, and I would need to proceed assuming that there would be no reallocation of public safety aid to lessen the blow of the levy.
So, Madam Chair, with that in mind, I want to say this. I work hard every day up here on this dais to see things your way, to hear from my colleagues, and to truly work to listen. And I hope that for this next minute that you can try and see it from my perspective. The one new thing that I learned in these last 2 budget meetings is that public safety is our collective #1 priority. And that's great, because it's mine too. But it doesn't mean anything unless we can implement it. Our staff have taken a careful look at what can be implemented, and this is it. So I really urge us not to end up in some type of, I'm not sure how to explain this, a turf battle. I don't mean to offend anybody, but I think we need to look at this like Councilmember Vita does. One, we need to believe our staff when they tell us their resource constraints. And if we don't approve this, we have less safety in our city because of this. I just want to put that in front of you. I won't be supporting a delay here. I think we need to get as much safety as we can implemented right now with the public safety aid money in this proposal in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Koski.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai. I had a different comment and question, but now I have shifted that in a moment. I was just wondering if perhaps, Director, you could just walk through I understand what you just described, but perhaps you can, the mayor gives his recommended budget August 15th, so I think it would be helpful for clarity to the public that is roughly, what are we at? That's roughly almost 8 weeks away. Mm-hmm. So if you could potentially walk us back. I understand that the BET is also part of this process. This is part of the process. So if we could maybe understand why one cycle delay, so that would be, I want to say the next meeting is July 8th. If this were to be brought forward again on July 8th, what that would, that would automatically make it impossible for any other changes before August 15th.
Through the chair, Councilmember Koski, there's many people involved in budget decision-making, not least of which are the budget team, and it takes a lot of time for us to assemble the budget book for August 15, and so we have to plan backwards from there. I also need to, part of my work is guiding the mayor and the mayor's team through the decision-making process, and that does not happen in one day. We have the added challenge this year of solving the budget gap, whereas we usually are doing the fun work of deciding where are we going to spend new money. We have an additional problem to solve, and so I need to be very realistic about my time constraints. The work of finance also does not end during budget decision-making. We do that on top of all of our other existing work. And so our capacity to wait for the council until, I don't know when the calendar is, but if it were to be at the end of even mid-July, I think that would be too late for me to realistically build that into the budget for August 15.
Okay, thank you. And I know that the maximum levy is set in September. So does that give us a little bit more time with this, or no?
Through the chair, the BET takes up the levy that the mayor proposes in August and has not deviated from that in my memory.
So the mayor can propose the levy, and then the BET, which does comprise of 2 council members, would also be able to weigh in at that time too.
Through the chair, they vote yes or no on the maximum levy amount.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I appreciate the comments from Councilmember Palmisano and kind of the predicament that we are in this at this moment. I want to note that it was the commissioner who wanted to move this back 2 weeks. I don't think we also at that time understood the impacts that we wouldn't have more time. Director DeSenza also talked a little bit about how what our options are, and that is to increase the levy. From my understanding, if we were to accept this today, or not accept us, I guess would be the best way to say that, is that there would be an almost 1% levy increase per year if we weren't to accept that. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Councilmember Koski, the levy is one way we'd look at it. I'm not going to preview mayor's decisions. I'm not going to put a levy number out there at this time.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's, for me, like we have all said, community safety is my number 1 priority. It is a top priority for most of us here. We also have a conversation coming tomorrow with the police contract that is very important to the public. The public's going to have an opportunity to weigh in, give comment on this, which is obviously one of the biggest dollar amounts here that we're utilizing this funding for. I could say personally for myself, I will be supporting the contract, but it's also important for me to really make sure we're having robust, transparent conversations about how we're going to fund it. And today, the director said that the council could dig in on other ways of how we want to fund this, whether it's the levy. And so I do feel our hands are a bit tied here, because we haven't had that time to take a deeper dive on other ways that we would want to think about reallocating or have a deeper conversation about the levy. So, like I said, I am going to prioritize the contract, the Police Federation contract, but I also feel that it's important for us to make sure that we're making the best fiscal decisions here. I understand this is one proposal, but the council has not also had time to dig in a little deeper. So I am feeling a little conflicted today on that.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Osman.
Thank you so much, Chair. I do want to, vote. Some of these proposals are very sound. I want to move forward. And, but I think having the chair propose that we come together to work together, give ourselves the time to make the best decisions, it's the best way to go. So I'm asking the commissioner and the CEO if they are willing to agree to extend a couple of weeks or a week, whatever you propose, to come together and work together and move this proposal forward with all of us supporting when we don't work together. We have seen it last year on the police incentives. That was something that was put in front of us and say, if you don't vote on it, and that's it. There was no discussion, there was no input on my side, and I'm someone who supports public safety and support police officers and support union contracts and so on, but I like for us to come together, and if we don't work together, our city will not be safe. Let's put it that way. Not just voting on this one, but so I'm asking, would that be something you're open to? Working with the leadership, working with us. I think some of the proposals you brought forward today are very sound, and I agree some of them.
Chair Chuck Tai, also Councilmember Osmond. I think, well, I'll say a couple of things. When I returned, I think on the 6th of June, I did review the information. I don't remember, I think that day or maybe the day before, I got an email from Chair or Council Vice President Chuck Tai requesting some information. And so part of that, in given some time to answer those questions, I tried to do that. And that's one of the reasons I asked for the 2 weeks. I think there's been a couple council members who have reached out, and we've talked about this. The vote on delay is totally up to you. We'll, from my perspective, and I don't want to talk for Margaret Anderson Kelleher, but we are always open for discussion. And so if you go forward, that's your decision. If you don't, that's still your decision. That's something that you have to do.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I think I agree the chair, the best way is to come back together, discuss this. This is the first presentation we're getting and also the public is getting. We're making big decisions and big amount of dollars, and having one cycle and coming back with a united vote will be the ideal choice that I will go with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And finally, I'll recognize Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Chuck Tai. I just will keep my remarks brief. The entire time I was listening to this presentation, I was just like, wow, we have a lot of work to do. And when I say we, I mean the council and our respective city staff, because we're essentially doing an $11.5 million budget markup in one meeting, and with a new awareness that we are on an extremely limited timeline, and apparently that timeline runs out as soon as this meeting closes. And I don't think that is a correct or good way to govern. I feel like the situation that we're in is rather unfortunate, and I wish we could have foreseen it. I'm having trouble just saying that we should move forward on an $11.5 million budget markup when so many of the amendments and changes that we're seeing there, council members voted together on, and authors were listed, and there were opportunities for conversations to kind of discuss what things could look like and how we can move things around. I'll say this option plus raising the levy, I'll echo what Council Vice President said. That's not our only option. We can look at other places where funding is available and really dig in. And not raise the levy and have a win-win. I believe that there's a real lack of process here, and there's a lot of work before us before we can move ahead. And with that, I'll close my remarks. I just don't feel like I'm able to move forward on such a big budget markup in one meeting today.
Thank you, Councilmember. And next in queue, we have Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai, and I'll admit it does feel like a little bit of a conundrum here that it wasn't until a few minutes ago that we realized, if we don't vote for this, then all of a sudden it throws off the whole budgeting and levy process. It just seems like a little bit alarmist. I think that there are other ways that we can fund this through current service levels and with unspent budgets of different departments, including the police department budget. I think there was unspent like $11 million last year. And I also want to say I really do support using the $4.9 million of uncommitted public safety aid. So if there was a proposal on the table today to declare our support for using that nearly $5 million of the safety aid to cover this $9 million, I think that would be really amenable as a compromise.
Thank you for offering that, council member, and offering your thoughts on the issue. Seeing no one else in queue for discussion, unless I'm missing any flags. Council member, Vice Chair Koski.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai. Sorry. I just want to make sure I get clarity. So if maybe Director DeSenza could come up one last time. You can tell that this conundrum here. So if we wait to approve or deny this past today, and we do this at the next budget committee meeting, would you be advising the mayor then to increase the levy?
Through the chair, Councilmember Koski, I think the next budget meeting is the 15th of July, is that correct? We'll be well underway in decision making, so I will have had to present a number of scenarios to the mayor already. And so it puts me and my team in a very difficult position to be able to effectively advise the executive and to be able to get a book out to all of you, a budget out to you that's balanced by, I think, August 14 is when the mayor is going to be presenting his budget. So it's not to say that you can't still take that action at that time, and it may still be a policy decision that you wish to do, but it makes it very constrained for budget planning purposes. So that's my point. The policy of it, that's all up to you, but in terms of the budget calendar, that is set by the charter.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion on the motion to delay, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville is absent. Vito.
No.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Nay.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Nay.
Vice Chair Koski.
Nay.
Chair Chugtai.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes and 4 nays.
That item carries. With that, members, we've completed all the business to come before this committee today, and without objection, we stand adjourned.